Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, and where we're going in life so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey. And there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 390. I can't believe we're almost at 400 episodes. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. I will be getting into having guests again, but I've had a lot to say, and I'm still lining up guests for the first quarter of this year. I've got some exciting people that I've reached out to, and some exciting people have confirmed, so stay tuned for that. But today, I'm going to talk about outdoors adventures. What to do when you don't feel like having adventures. This may sound like kind of a weird topic, but it's something that I've been experiencing lately. It's the middle of winter. It's freezing in some places. It's been really cold here. I'm not feeling like going outside a lot of the time. And I'm not really feeling like having outdoors adventures sometimes. So what do you do instead? I think this is natural, not just because of the weather. We tend to want to kind of slow down during winter, be indoors, rest, recover. It's very natural to feel this way. And I know about the wheel of the year, I know about cycles, and yet I tend to resist it because I want things to be the same all year long. I want consistency. I want things to fit into my calendar. I can be very kind of head-based, and I just kind of want to get things done without always listening to my body. So today's episode is about what to do when you don't feel like having adventures. But before we get into today's episode, I wanted to say thank you to my new patron, Sally. Thank you so much for signing up on Patreon and supporting me there. If you get value from this podcast and you would like to support my work, you can head over to patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton, and you can join me there. Tiers start at just $1 a month, and you get exclusive access to stuff that I don't share anywhere else. You can also get access to free ebooks, all of my free ebooks, depending on what tier you sign up at. So again, that's patreon.com/Holly Worton. So into today's episode. What to do when you don't feel like having adventures. So this has been something that's been going on for me just this week, really, because a couple weeks ago, I had this great 30K run on a Monday with my husband. We had such a great time. I mean, it was terrible mud. The trails were streams, but it was really lovely. It was a great adventure together. And then last week, I had a big, long 40K walk from sunrise to after sunset. Really great adventure, really enjoyable time. And then this week, I was scheduled to run 33K on Monday. And I didn't have a very good sleep the night before, so then I passed it on and on and on. And it's Friday as I record this, and I think I'm going to do it tomorrow, but I'm not quite sure. I keep putting it off for various reasons. I mean, I've had weird sleep this week, and I tend to not want to go for a run in the morning if I haven't slept well, or if I don't feel rested, or if I'm just not feeling well physically. But also, I don't know, I just haven't felt up to it. I have done other runs this week, shorter runs, I did an hour today and an hour a couple days ago, and those were great. But I just wasn't feeling up for a big, long adventure. And I was feeling kind of bad about that because I set these goals for myself, and I plan how to achieve the goals and what I need to do to achieve them, and I block it all out in my calendar. And then if something goes wrong or I can't do things the way I wanted to, I kind of beat myself up a little bit and I feel bad about myself, and I'm not always good at being flexible. So probably this whole pandemic situation has been good for me because it's had to teach me to reschedule and reevaluate and change things, which I have been talking about on the podcast lately. So I think it's gotten to the point where I wanted to kind of stop and evaluate what's going on for me to see why I don't feel like having adventures, but I've realized that I've had adventures in other ways. So I wanted to talk to you about if you're in the same spot, and you might be, because every time I share things like this, I get emails from people saying, oh, I'm in exactly the same place. Thank you for talking about that. So if you've been feeling like you don't really feel like having outdoors adventures, what can you do? So I think one of the most important things is to know your why. And I did a podcast episode about this several weeks ago. It was episode 382, Know Your Why for Your Outdoor Adventures. And I'll link to this in the show notes. But I think it's really important for you to know why you do your outdoors adventures. Why do you go walking? Why do you do trail running? Why do you do whatever the thing it is that you do? And what do those adventures give you? Do they give you a sense of freedom? Do they give you a sense of exploring new places? What do they give you? And how can you meet that need elsewhere? So I've realized that much like in the summer when I was stuck at home with Lyme disease and had zero energy to do anything, lately Augustine and I have really been into kind of traveling virtually with documentaries. So we started out watching, I think it was The Long Way Up, with Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman, where they do this whole motorcycle trip from Tierra del Fuego at the south point of Argentina all the way up to, I think they ended up in Alaska. Oh no, they went to LA on that one. So then we really got into that. We don't ride motorcycles, but we really liked their adventure. And then we realized they had two other documentary series, The Long Way Down, The Long Way Around, and we watched those. And we really, really enjoyed those. Again, we're not motorcycle riders, but it was really interesting to see what kinds of places you can travel to, like how far out in the middle of nowhere they went on these motorcycles. And it's not a trip that I ever want to do, but I really, really enjoyed watching someone else do it. Because they went to some really exciting remote places that were just really, really lovely. We've also gotten back into Anthony Bourdain. We really, really loved Parts Unknown when we first watched it, and that was his last series that he did before he died. And we've recently gotten into The Layover, and now we're watching No Reservations. So these are travel shows with food. I really like Parts Unknown because, again, he went to some really remote parts of the world and really connected with the people there and ate their food, and I really, really loved it. The Layover and No Reservations is more kind of travel-y. I mean, those were done for the Travel Channel, so it makes sense. But these are great ways to see other parts of the world during a pandemic when you might not want to be engaging in international travel, and seeing other kind of foods and things that other people can experience that you might experience if you decided to go to these places once the pandemic lifts and it's safe to do so. Or now, some people are still traveling. If that's safe where you live, go for it. So I think kind of traveling from home, traveling from your couch, by watching travel documentaries and travel shows can be a really great way to give you that sense of adventure and to help you plan for future adventures. You might find a place that you never thought of going, but it just really piqued your interest through watching this documentary or travel show, and you might add it to your list. So that's one thing you can do to meet your need for travel or adventure. Another thing is to just kind of live vicariously through others' outdoors adventures. So watching documentaries and videos and books and podcasts. Like I said, we're really into watching trail running races and all kinds of stuff. We, a couple weeks ago, were really obsessed with the Western States 100, which is a race that goes through California. It's a 100-mile race that I would love to run, but I hate running and walking in the summer. And I don't even do long distance walks anymore here in England in the summer because I'm just really sensitive to heat. So the odds of me doing a 100-mile race in California are next to nothing. But I would love to. So we've just been watching. We watched loads of videos on YouTube about the Western States 100. So that kind of really satisfied my desire for learning more about that race and kind of experiencing it without actually experiencing it, because probably not ever going to do that. I recently listened to Joanna Penn's episode where she talked about walking the Pilgrim's Way, which she did late last year. I think it was in October. And that's on her Books and Travel podcast, which I'll link to in the show notes. I really love that. When it's winter and when I'm not doing long distance trails, I love hearing about other people's adventures of walking long distance trails, whether it's on podcasts or books. There are so many books that I've read about other people's kind of travel memoirs about walking long distance trails, and I love those. And I notice that every winter I tend to read more of those because I'm not walking as much, usually. So you might be able to meet your need for adventure through reading, watching videos, listening to podcasts, or maybe you're just tired. And I think this is something that's really important to check in with yourself about. Maybe you're mentally, physically, emotionally tired. Like I said, I ran 30K one week, walked 40K the following week. Those were big things. So kind of makes sense that maybe I needed a rest this week, or maybe I didn't feel up to doing much. Maybe I'll do those 33K tomorrow. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just leave it for next week. But a lot's been going on lately. I have been kind of mentally and emotionally stressed, in addition to physical stress from doing these things. So maybe I need a break. I don't know. I'm going to evaluate that tomorrow because I did have a good sleep last night, finally. So how do you know when you need a break? It's time to check in with yourself and just really be honest. And this is something that I struggle with. Sometimes, being honest with myself about whether or not I need to take a rest. But ask yourself, how do you feel mentally? How do you feel emotionally? How do you feel physically? This might be something you want to journal on. I've mentioned before that I use the Oura ring, and I will link to that in the show notes. What it does is it checks your temperature and your heart rate variation throughout the night, and it gives you kind of a score in the morning as to how well you slept and how well your readiness is for doing stuff, physical stuff and exercise. And I found that really useful. Sometimes I feel like it's really accurate, and sometimes I feel like it's not really accurate. And both ways have been helpful to me. Like sometimes I'll wake up and I feel like crap, and, I go downstairs, feed the cats, have my water, have my only cup of coffee, and then kind of continue to tune in. Like, can I go for a run? How do I feel? Do I feel like going out and doing something? And I'll check my readiness. And if my readiness says I'm amazing, like I've got really high scale of readiness, but I still don't feel it, even after kind of waking up and getting into the day, then I listen to myself. Like I never prioritize what the ring says over what I feel. But if the ring doesn't coincide with how I feel, it kind of triggers an extra layer of attention and paying attention to how do I feel? Why is it saying this? Why is it saying I feel great shape to do something when I don't feel very good? So I find it's a good way to get kind of a second opinion on how I feel. Maybe that's just me that finds it really challenging to tune into my body, but I'm probably not the only one. So think about what you really need right now. Do you need to have an adventure? Do you need to push yourself physically? Or do you need more sleep? Do you need self-care? I've had a few nights this week where I just had weird sleep. I've been falling asleep more quickly, which is great, but then my sleep throughout the night was just weird dreams and just kind of disturbed and not great deep sleep. So that's also something that can affect you. So pay attention to that. And think about what you need. Again, do you need more sleep? Maybe you just need to have a great night's sleep and then you can do your adventures. And remember, you may have been resting physically, but maybe you're stressed out mentally, emotionally. And that takes its toll too. Ask yourself, could you be burnt out? Have you been doing too much? Do you need a rest? Do you need to reevaluate your goals, your plans? Do you need to kind of shift things around in your calendar? Could you have a smaller adventure? So this week, I kept pushing my long run later and later in the week, but I did have 2 nice 1-hour runs that were really lovely. Cold, so cold, but really lovely. So could you have a smaller adventure? Or could you just maybe go to the park and walk around and get outdoors that way? Or could you have adventures in consciousness? Maybe do some meditation, try something new with your mind, yoga, relax. I don't know. Try new things. Or maybe you don't need a rest. Maybe you need motivation. You can always force yourself to do something, and sometimes that works. There have been many times where I did not feel like going for a long run, but I did it anyway, and I loved it. And that's one thing for me that's really tough about running. A lot of times I don't feel like running, but I do it because I know that while I'm doing it and afterwards, I'm going to feel great. I'm going to really enjoy it. I'm going to have a great adventure. I'm going to have just a great time, and it's going to make me feel good. So sometimes forcing yourself to do something is a good thing. Sometimes it's not. Figure out what would make you feel better. Figure out what would make you feel motivated and excited and adventurous and do that thing. Or just do something different. You can try a different type of adventure. Instead of outdoors adventures, you could try something new with food. You could cook a new recipe or go to a new restaurant if restaurants are open where you live. Try a new craft or hobby or new type of fitness. You can do online classes even if you're stuck at home. Learn something new. There's so many things you can learn. There are so many types of adventures that can satisfy your need for adventure without getting outdoors and doing the outdoors adventure that maybe you're not in the mood for. Also, depending on what lockdown restrictions are in your country or part of the world, call a friend. Get motivated to have an adventure with them. Or ask them to help motivate you. Sometimes it's easier. I mean, both of the runs that I did this week were with Augustine, and it was really, really enjoyable to go out for a couple of runs with him. I'm really enjoying going on runs with him. I didn't think I'd ever like running with other people because I like running alone so much, but it's been fantastic. So that's been a good way for me to get out of the house, have a smaller run, a shorter run, and really enjoy it. So sometimes if you're not motivated to do something on your own, it can help to do it with someone else. And again, if you're in lockdown where you live, try to do it with a family member or someone that lives at home. If not, do what you can. So to quickly recap, know your why for your adventures. Know what your adventures give you and ask yourself how you can meet that need elsewhere. Really tune into yourself and see, are you tired? Do you need a break? How do you feel mentally, emotionally, physically? What do you need now? Do you need more adventures or do you need rest? Could you be burnt out? Do you need to reevaluate? Could you have a smaller adventure? Do you need external motivation? Could you try a different type of adventure that doesn't involve physical activity? So this is going to be a shorter episode today, but I thought this was really important to share because I think I'm probably not the only one that's going through this. I feel like I have to be doing exciting things all the time and making the most of my time and my life and everything. And sometimes you just need to rest or postpone or whatever. But again, I hope this was useful in helping you identify what might be going on for you if you're experiencing the same thing and what to do instead. Because there are so many ways to get adventures and so many ways to experience adventure in your life, and you don't always need to do the same things. So if you're feeling like slowing down because it's winter, if you're feeling like going within, maybe your adventures are journaling and meditation and inner adventures and things like that. This is the perfect time for it. So related episodes, if you want to check out, I mentioned episode 382 where I talk about knowing your why for your outdoors adventures. Episode 380 with Sarah K. Brandis, we talked about what to do when our passions lead to burnout. And I think that's a really, really useful one. It's something that I'm always kind of aware of. I'm always kind of paying attention to my energy levels and managing my energy because I've had such problems with energy levels in the past, probably because of my thyroid. But that's a great episode if you're worried about burnout. Episode 379, I talk about how to reevaluate your goals, plans, and projects, including stuff like your adventures and your goals. So you might find any of those episodes useful if this is something that you're experiencing. But I would love to hear from you. Are you feeling still that raging desire to go out and have adventures, or are you feeling like you need to slow down and go within? I would love to hear from you. Drop me a line and let me know. You can email me at holly@hollyworton.com or find me online and get in touch. And that's all for now. Like I said, this is going to be a short one. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you found it useful. And remember to visit hollyworton.com/390 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.